Now we will talk about building Europe scale-up infrastructure. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Miljan, you can also come. Thank you. Please, sit next to me.
It's not a mistake this time, right?
No, it's an honor. Thank you. So whereas our first panel was looking at the role for private equity, now we want to talk about sovereign tools that are going to help with institutional investment. This session is focusing on institutional capital and how it can fill the gap between Europe's vibrant startup culture and the global scale-up challenge. Across the world, we know that institutional models like DARPA in the United States catalyze private innovation. What is Europe's answer to that challenge? We'll explore how actors like the EIB, EBRD, and IFC, as well as national agencies, can align their instruments to unlock private capital, strengthen strategic autonomy, and help scale Europe's next champions. My guiding question for the panel is how can sovereign and institutional finance become the backbone of Europe's scale-up ecosystem? Let me turn to my first panelist. None of you have cards. That's okay. Miljan Zdrale, from the EBRD, leads the strategic investments across Central Europe, focusing on growth stage financing, competitiveness, and resilience. Could you please tell us how is the EBRD responding to geopolitical and strategic challenges, for example, supply chain security or tech sovereignty, while supporting Europe's growth stage companies?
Okay. First of all, I would like to extend my gratitude to be here, and particularly to Mr. Orešković and our partners for having me here. EBRD is a unique financial institution, and I'm glad that I have opportunity to present what we do. Actually, usually people link us with, super sovereign institutions, mainly dealing with the government, but actually our heart is really private sector. That's what we do. This is our DNA, but inevitably we have to cooperate with the governments and other FIs, and particularly EU, and there was a commissioner last night at the dinner. We are working hand in hand. Why we are working hand in hand? Because we are trying to be additional, because we can take more risk, simply because who we are. We are backed by the actually G7, our key strategic shareholders, but 62 governments, including EIB and EU, and we can take more risk. And since I moved from London to the region, I think region, as Robert mentioned, has been evolving, and I think we also have tried to follow that. We cannot be obviously a recipe for every single issue, but I think what we have tried is also develop our offer and take more risk. And more recently, I think what our duty is compared to, let's say, conventional commercial banks, and we just had them here together with the Dinko and Alexandra and Ingo, is also try to link more policy and reforms, but to link it finally with the investments, what's happening in reality. Very often we could see reforms for the sake of reforms, as Alexandra was mentioning, and then as a result we had more bureaucracy at work, including in our own institution. So, for instance, key focus is now on our side. What we try to do, particularly in this part of the region, is really, Robert has been mentioning, the region has progressed a lot, but also is regressed in perception sense, particularly in the recent geopolitical environment. It's very difficult to invite a new capital to the region. And even well-established private equity funds having challenges to raise the money. And without equity, I think we all agree, Ingo mentioned, it's very difficult to grow. So we offer also equity together with private equity funds, investing directly, trying to be bold more. We also, you asked about supply chain. We saw supply chains collapsing during COVID. Even now, it's becoming very difficult because of all the kind of closing the borders and everything what is happening. We see what's happening in the US. We also developed more recently a supply chain financing framework where we are really together with the partner banks trying to share the risk, provide the unfunded guarantees at AAA rated institutions where they can onboard more suppliers, they can provide more liquidity earlier in time, so access to finance coupled again very often because we are talking about sustainable competitive. It's not sustainable for sake of sustainability, it's also competitiveness. So we offer use Horizon 2020 money to develop those suppliers in terms of circular economy, packaging, and be more competitive because every single retailer would like to see and nearshoring as much as possible. On the digital tech space, that's very important because I think we have digital approach which we developed now from 26 to 2030, where we are trying really to help our companies don't be afraid of cybersecurity issues, but actually take that as a strategic competitive edge from manufacturing to agribusiness, energy. I think all energy investments that we see, they will be high energy consuming when artificial intelligence even more kicks in. So our focus is really to support startups. We have this EBRD Star Venture program where we have maybe 360 companies we supported in a number of countries. 51% of them is youth-led, 34% is women-led, and I think we kind of nurture them, try them to scale, professionalize. We have also now developed venture capital investment program where we also put the seed capital and then hopefully grow them so that private equity can take over once they scale up and go beyond their borders. And finally now also on energy front, this is where Europe needs to be more independent. Again, we are talking about renewables, but without water storage solutions, without investments in the grid, and I see also we see the lot of lack of action by the key counterparts, for instance, in the distribution and transmission systems. That's where our focus is, and that's where we're going to be blending our money with InvestEU, with the governments, obviously, to target, because it's very difficult to scale up renewables and new capacity without energy grid, and that's all connected with the competitiveness of overall economy. For instance, just recently we've signed in Croatia, together with EU Modernization Fund, greenfield equity for the greenfield battery storage project, something like 16 million euros, which is very innovative. And I think this is on the supply side. We need to make those energy grid very flexible in order to scale up renewables and again become more competitive. So I think these are multiple layers. And last, on the capital markets, it's not going against the banks, but it's still very much bank-centric, particularly Southeast Europe, our region. Talking about funds, I think there is a lot of money from retailers. We see, for instance, a couple of IPOs that happened in Croatia where retail investors became like 40-50% participating in those. So EBRD is working now with 9 stock exchanges in the region, including Zagreb and Ljubljana and Romania and Poland, etc. Hopefully, together we're just launching now with EU initiative in all these stock exchanges to create a regional stock exchange market, something like we just did in Baltics. Maybe it was easier there because they are more homogeneous and there is one shareholder, which is NASDAQ. But I think this is what is needed. And then all the savings that are in the hands, particularly of the retailers, will not be ending in the fifth property in Zagreb on the location coast, but maybe capital markets. And capital market is crucial for development of the local champions.
Thank you. Guillaume Klossa, chair of a deep tech company, also a special advisor for AI and digital tech to European Commissioner President, and chair of EuropaNova, a think tank, and Conclave. You have very broad experience in different areas that touch upon questions that are going to be addressed by the Future 500. So in your opinion, what are the challenges for a company that wants to scale up in Europe, and what could be the game changer?
Right question. First of all, I want to express my gratitude also to say how much important this next 500 program is, and not only for Western Europe, for Europe. We need such a program for the European Union, and it's something which should be a top priority of the EU. So, Stefan, Jörn, thank you very much for taking the initiative with the Bled Strategic Forum. Once that said, I can speak from 2 perspectives. One, as an entrepreneur, and I think we need the voice of entrepreneur today because this is the perspective, and one as a former special advisor to the President of the European Commission. As an entrepreneur, my perspective is the following. I'm working to develop a European company which aims at becoming a global leader and contribute to Europe back to cope with European and global challenge, particularly in the field of global health, and on a topic which is fundamental for European society and for the European health model, which is the quality of early diagnosis. And this brick is very important because once you have an equal, high-quality, inexpensive diagnosis for everybody, you have a leverage effect on all the health system. You can bring better quality for everybody, but at the same time, you reduce cost. And we can revive our health system. And this is very important because we are the one in Europe which are investing the most in health. So we should be global leader in health. And it is not the case. And it is not the case. Why? There are several reasons. Why? First one, we don't have a European single market with regard to health. And if there should be one priority regarding the single market, it's health. I mean, it's 20% of the GDP potentially. Where is it? Why it is not discussed? Second, we have all the money we want. We have all the bank we want, but there is a total risk adversity. And we have venture, but venture, they want to invest when the product is done. So what are they useful for? Sorry to say that. They are useless. Venturing is taking risk. And we are venture which are not taking risk. So what do we do? Third, we speak about the American system, the American culture. But the fact is, in America, you have public and private orders, which allow companies to have credibility and allow entrepreneurs to maintain their share holding. I give you an example. American clinics were able to invest in innovative projects massively, put 10 million or 100 million ticket on an innovation which does not exist. Once you have that, you have the guarantee to have a market, and then the funding is much easier. And you give little share of your company to venture, you remain the main shareholder, and you can scale up. But if the banks of the shareholder want 50% of your capital from the beginning, how do you want to scale up? How do you want to keep the entrepreneur mindset? This is an illusion. So we need to work on all these different aspects. Regarding regulation, regulation is not bad. But the question is the objective of regulation. In the field of health, we should have one objective, which is to increase the quality of diagnosis. Where is it? Nowhere. This should be a kind of Manhattan project. And once we have that, I can tell you everything is much easier for entrepreneurs. So we really need the EU to have real political objective and regulation to support this objective. And you know, regulation can support innovation. Regulation is not bad in itself. When the digital platform, Amazon, Google, are critical with regard to European regulation, they are critical with regard to DSA and to DMA. They are not implemented yet. And up to the moment, there was no regulation. So they developed massively in Europe. I don't know why they are explaining that this regulation prevented them to develop. I mean, they are doing 30% of their turnover in Europe and 50% of the result. And they don't pay anything. So maybe the question would be to regulate more and maybe to tax a bit. But I think we should put the right question at the right level. And we need the EU, we need a strong EU, we need a forward planning with EU, and we need a seamless EU. Because I'm very happy to see the 27 Commission here. But when you engage discussion with the European Commission, you need to engage with each DG. Do you see how difficult it is? After their program, their excellent program, I mean, the EIC, European Innovation Council, is remarkable. It's a kind of DARPA. But let's be honest, this is the cherry on the cake. And DARPA is the cherry on the cake because you have the $150 billion of expenditure of the US Army, which is sustaining the development of startups. Where are they in Europe? Nowhere. So we need to develop this ecosystem, and this should be a top priority of this present Commission. I love the word competitiveness. But I know so many states which are competitive without growth. So we need not only a competitiveness agenda, but we need a growth agenda. And in addition to that, given the non-cooperative behavior of certain allies, partners, maybe we need also a power agenda in order to transform the European Union into a global, sustainable, and responsible power.
Thank you. Let's talk now to someone with a growth agenda. Matevž Frangež is State Secretary for the Ministry of Economy of Slovenia. You're a national policymaker and innovation advocate, and you've worked on programs that aim to bridge regional innovation and European funding. I hear that you're now preparing a strategy for startups and scale-ups. What stage is it at, and how can a right-sized country like Slovenia benefit from being a hub?
Before answering your specific question, and thank you for this lovely description, I'd like to maybe have some remarks on all the things we heard so far, and it will go into the context, I promise.
In 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
First of all, I firmly believe that we already entered the biggest change in global economy in human history, no doubt. With all the changes, technological, geopolitical, cultural, social, all the effects interconnecting and creating, this something new. I would like to quote Antonio Gramsci at this point. He wrote in Prison Diaries in 1929, "When the old is dying and the new cannot be born, the variety of morbid symptoms appear." It is exactly the description of the time we live in. And everything, from Trump to struggling economics in Europe to facing big competition from East Asia, it is a description of the morbid symptoms we face. So I strongly believe, some of the speakers mentioned Draghi report today. I'm a strong believer in a Draghi report. Draghi report showcases a role of a modern state, a modern Europe, how we should act in order to share risks, because what we are facing is low investment. Europe is not in crisis because of regulation. Europe is not in crisis because of green transition. Europe is in crisis because 15 years ago, on the peak of global financial and economic crisis, we choose the wrong recipe. We choose to save money, to put heavy burdens on businesses on one hand, but also with impoverished public sector. China and US, on the other hand, invested massively and developed new mechanisms in order for businesses to have a courage to invest. And so it comes to the role of state and Europe in boosting investment. It is about sharing risks. Obviously, I'm a fan of Mariana Mazzucato and entrepreneurial state. So, yes, and thank you for your question. Slovenia tries to do exactly that. Develop a variety of mechanisms that will support researchers, innovators, entrepreneurs, investors in order to develop, innovate, and invest. And we do this with variety of things. Let me remind you that we have a strong growth of our investment in R&D on all range of the technological readiness level chart, that we are putting a record number of different kind of subsidies. I know it creates also a moral hazard, but also, not only because the state could be tempted to pick the winners. I really believe in Mariana Mazzucato saying, do not pick the winners, pick the willing. And this is exactly what Europe needs. A new chapter of our motivation to transform it into mobilization and, as it was said, Stepan, yesterday during evening, a new European ambition. And I'm really glad, and some of the stakeholders strategically important for the process are here today. We've built Slovenian startup strategy from the scratch, from the ecosystem. So we've translated the first generations of founders, now investors, into very simple tools in order to improve our environment and to evolve from one of the environments that are on the last places in Europe. Slovenia invests 41 euros of venture capital per capita, comparing to Estonia with nearly 1,000. Some other countries, 1,500,000 euros. So with several quick steps, we want to the ecosystem. But this is not all. Attracting talent, raising new ways of venture capital. Seed Banca is presenting new generations of their mixed public-private venture capital funds. Slovenian entrepreneurial state, on the initiative of our ministry, launched Slovenian Technology Fund. And just let me share an example. In order to be compliant with the state aid rules, on a 75% of public capital, they should collect 25% of private capital. On their 15 million, more than 50 million were raised of investors dedicated and committed to invest in Slovenian startups. Along with other instruments, I'm really betting on strategic technologies for Europe platform. A strong public call that it will be issued soon in order to boost and support the development of strategic technologies. So biotechnology in Slovenia is already a giant in biotechnology in pharma. By the way, health, I strongly agree. We are this sector presents 32% of our experts. Second, digital and advanced digital technologies, including AI, clean tech, with everything we have to do in our environment. And I strongly agree. Regulation is not only bad. Remember 15 years ago, the crisis was enabled because of a lack of regulation. But what we need, a strategic leap toward, is a lean, efficient, and smart regulation, using specifically AI tools in order to support doing the right thing that will be safe for consumers, safe for investors, safe for our communities, but in most efficient way possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's turn now to someone who's actually on the implementation side of some of these policies. Tamara Zajec Balažič is at the forefront of implementing national programs that attract foreign investment, like Spirit Slovenia. They foster innovation, and they also build growth ecosystems. So my question to you is, how can programs like yours, like EU instruments such as InvestEU or the Green Deal, serve as multipliers for private capital and help scale regional champions?
First of all, let me thank you. I think being here today is really important to get to the information to the entrepreneurs about how actually operationally they can come and get these public funds and how things will be working in the future. Our State Secretary already mentioned, or you asked him about the new strategy. Spirit Slovenia, as such, will also be part of it, helping to implement some of those strategic instruments. And from this respect, I think that from scaling up, from initial startups, it is very important that the companies, they do start, but they have trouble getting the money before they become bankable. And I think that in this respect, it is very important for the different financial models, like they were mentioned already today, from guarantees that can be offered by development banks, like Slovenia's investment bank, this was already mentioned today, EBRD, EIB, can offer de-risking from the respect of the private capital and can be easier for financial banks to invest into, let's say, new technologies in the future. Also from the respect of the public capital investing into some, let's say, maybe strategic industries, like they were also mentioned already, from green technology, sustainable health, biotechnology, can offer the initial startup or the initial burst for also the private capital to come in. Some other possibilities are venture capital funds that are combined with, on one hand, with the private equity, but on the other hand, also with the public equity. And we've seen also in our region already examples that are being successful. There, of course, I think is still some issue with maybe getting the information out to the entrepreneurs, to the companies, to the startups, and having this dialogue, the open dialogue, to listen to each other and make these tools even more, let's say, equitable for them.
Thank you. All right, the lightning round has been reduced to 30 seconds per person, right? But it's an easy question, right? What is one instrument, sovereign or institutional, that could be a game changer for scaling Europe's promising companies? And you get one word and one sentence to explain it.
Ambition, the will of every European citizen to succeed on the 450 million European market with 30 million European businesses. The understanding that Europe is our home and using this domestic backyard in order to then scale and build global champions.
All right, there were a lot of comments there, but I'll allow it. Tamara.
Okay. I would say creating common instruments. It was already mentioned today. Let's make Europe one. Let's bring the capital, the options, the different options to the entrepreneurs and make them available to them and make them also aware of how they can use it. Thank you.
Guillaume?
I have asked the question to a former Biden advisor some weeks ago, the exact question, and he answered me, you need a European army. Because what makes the difference in US, in China, in Russia, with regard to tech, in fact, is the investment of the army, a European army.
Thank you. And Miljan.
I mentioned we need really more functioning capital markets, and when I say that, it's not only about public, listed, as Robert mentioned, but it's also about private. And I think we need to send a strong message that there are a lot of successful stories. And I think in that sense, the duty of institutions like ours is really to reduce the risk and try to enable the ecosystems so that the really companies can thrive and we can really mobilize a lot of brain, improved governance, and capital that is there somehow is still afraid of this lovely region, particularly southern from Alps.
See, single word needs a description.
I guess so. It's okay. So I just have a little list of the things that have come up in this discussion and also tie into what we heard in the first panel. The first is that one of the most important changes that's required is in mindset. Again, we see this feeling that people need to accept that business is actually something that helps society and helps grow society rather than work against it. The second is the need for a single common market in Europe. and for strong, forward-planning European decisions. Third, an appetite for risk and the need to share the risk across different players. And the fourth is not deregulation, but smart regulation. And the smart regulation not only of European companies, but also of those international and American companies that are making a lot of money in Europe. So I would remind you of what Minister Hahn said this morning, that entrepreneurs build companies while governments and IFIs are the environment in which they prosper. That means that there's a role for everybody in this room in building Europe's future. And only by working together can we ensure the positive future of the Future 500. Thank you.